And there's no doubt that when you look back on your career, God's had his hand on my situation. I mean, I'll tell you, for example, my debut for South Africa. My best performance for Natal, before being picked as a one-day international debutant for South Africa, was like 3 for something. And my highest score was like 22 not out. I get picked to play for South Africa. In my debut match, I get 66 not out. When we were like 100 for 6, me and Jacques put on the score, and I get 66 not out, and I end up 4 for 30 odd, and I get man of the match. Now that's my best batting performance in one-day cricket and my best bowling performance in one-day cricket, and that was for South Africa.
In the same match.
In the same match, and on your debut. So now it's like, thank you, Lord.
Cricket fans, this episode is for you. ICC Champions Trophy has kicked off, and with me today is the sporting icon, the cricketing icon, Shaun Pollock. And in this episode, Shaun and I discuss the state of world cricket. How do we support the smaller countries in a sport that is dominated by the big 3 at the moment, India, Australia and England? Is there still a hunger to play and represent your country at test level? The relevance of bowling and the rise of the spinner as a result of T20 cricket, as well as the evolution of batting skills and the modern mindset of a batsman, and a secret to why Shaun was able to accumulate the career that he had was how good can you be when you're not at your best. So how good is your B game? This is for any cricketing fan. It's a wonderful lesson to learn on cricket, and as well as anybody who is sport minded, they can apply a lot of what Shaun has made his strengths throughout what is one of the best careers in South African cricketing history. Please like, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Shaun Pollock, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, good to be here. Let's go.
So, Shaun, I'll tell you a story. Probably the first time you've met me or remember meeting me. I've met you before, and I'll tell you the story. It was 1999, maybe 2000, which means I was grade 4, grade 5. Yeah. And
gosh, making me feel old now.
Yeah, and I was playing a hockey tournament. It was either at Thomas More or was it Lyndhurst? And you were there signing bats and balls and getting pictures with people. And I was playing for Forest View Primary School. That's where I went to school. And I can't remember if I got a hockey stick to the face or if I got a hockey ball to the face, but split me right open, blood pouring. And I had my tracksuit top, and then somebody said to me, my mom or my grandpa, one of the two, said, Shaun Pollock's here, he's signing t-shirts, and do you want to go and meet him, make you feel better? And so then I went, and they'd obviously patched me up, but I gave you my school jersey. You signed, they had the white inner linings of those jackets. You signed the inside, and we got a picture together. Okay. And all of a sudden, the pain went away.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Because it was, it was all worth it in the end, because I got a chance to meet Shaun Pollock. So
yeah, I suppose those were the days I was still playing. It was, it was probably worth meeting me then.
Yeah. But my question to you, people in the public eye, sportsmen, something like that as a kid made a difference to me. How important and what responsibility do you think the players of today have, and sportsmen and women around the world? What responsibility do they have to the people to be role models?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of an unfair one, to be brutally honest, depending on where you're at in your career. I always have talks where I touch on the fact that if you've got a kid who's 18, 19, 20, he's at Stellenbosch, and what they get up to on a Friday night, or the way they might conduct themselves or behave, and they've come out of school, they're letting their hair down. Would you want what they do to be put into a paper or on social media? Probably not. And I think the same situation is to young individuals. So you've got like a 21-year-old who's brilliant at batting or bowling, whatever it may be, and he gets his opportunity to play for South Africa. It's a bit harsh to expect him to be a role model at that age. 100% work out that once you get to 30 or even maybe younger than that, but once you've played for South Africa for a few years, you get to understand the ongoings, the responsibilities. then you can expect someone to be a role model. But at the end of the day, they are getting paid for what? To be able to produce their skills, which they're really good at, to be able to win games for their team that they're playing. Not necessarily to be able to be prepared to be role models.
Yes.
That's something that goes down to their character, how they were raised, whether they can or can't be. I mean, I would expect most to be a decent role model, but I think there is a little bit too much of an expectation placed on particularly young guys when they're coming through to say, oh, you should be a role model. And, there's an expectation that you let people down. And, I mean, I can think of an example where you might be doing a signing session at a shopping mall. You might sign for 2 hours, and then as you're leaving, you're charging to be somewhere, and someone comes across and says, can I get a signature? Oh, I can't do it now. And that person goes away and goes, can you believe that Pollock guy? He didn't even sign the autograph for me, but you've just signed for 2 hours. So I do believe that there's a responsibility, and you learn that as you go along. But I think sometimes people need to be cut slack because they might be very strong and talented in a particular field, but the other part of their character hasn't quite developed to that stage.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, because you're absolutely right. There is that expectation. And there's almost, because you watch somebody on TV as a fan, you seem to hold them to a higher standard than you sometimes might even hold yourself. So I think that's a fantastic answer. You mentioned the youth and young cricketers coming through. Who caught your eye in this latest T20 series?
Yeah, Landry Pretorius. I mean, I think he's caught everyone's eye. I mean, I think he was fantastic. Gideon Peters as well. I was like, where's he been? He's 24, 25. Like, how come we haven't heard about him? I mean, he bowled with some real speed. I think Pretorius, he's got a maturity to him. He's got a kind of technique that could be effective in a lot of places. So excited to see how he gets on and where he goes. I mean, we know about a lot of the other guys that came through and performed really well. But I think, heading to the Champions Trophy, I think there's a lot of guys in good touch. Someone like Ryan Rickleton, I think he could play a big part.
Sure, he's been unreal.
Yeah,
in many formats of the game now.
Exactly. I mean, he's been consistent as well. So I actually think they're in a good space. I think some of the more experienced players like your Miller and your Klaasen and your Markhams probably go away from the tournament and think, we performed all right, but they believe that when they get to play for South Africa, if you get it all together, I think we'll be all right there.
Where has it gone wrong over the last 6 months in South African ODI cricket? Because the back end of last year, we haven't exactly covered ourselves in glory, I think, in the Middle East and then in the ODI series against Pakistan. How do you see us coming back from that and building off some of this positive momentum with, for example, the form players that have come through this recent homebound series?
Yeah, I think personnel has been difficult. We haven't been able to get our best players on the park bowling-wise. I mean, you think of someone like, Williams, Nandre Berger, Heinrich Nokia, Lungi was injured, KG didn't go, he was rested. I mean, and maybe I'm missing 2 or 3. Kutsia was injured. I don't think they had their strongest sides. When you look at what we did here against India, when we went to the East, as you say, there wasn't the best personnel. So I actually think, Rob Walters as a coach, I think he almost needs to be judged on his ICC performances in his tournaments, and he's done a little semi-final, he's then got to a final. I think this is a big one to see where we're at from a one-day cricket perspective. And then the next one you kind of judge him on would be that T20 World Cup that happens in India February next year. But I think with the amount of cricket that's played, the personnel having to rest, the injuries that you've had, you can't always get your best team on the park. So although it hasn't been good, I wouldn't judge it too much by that.
Yeah. Chatting about the different formats of the game, something I spoke to Mark Nicholas about this time last year. Where is world cricket at the moment with respect to these 3 formats of the game? We've got Test cricket, ODI cricket, T20 cricket, and there's a lot of cricket being played, but at the same time, as a fan, it seems a bit higgledy-piggledy. It seems a bit all over the show. We haven't played many ODI games. We've recently come off this local tournament. Test cricket. I mean, you can see that fantastic that we've made the final, but you look at the amount of Test cricket that we've played compared to other nations. Where do you see the state of the game at the moment?
Yeah, it's in a tough spot. I think T20 leagues have taken too much, prevalence around the world, and unfortunately that is the case. I think we always feared this when it was introduced as a T20 format, what it was going to do to the rest of them and what impact it was going to have on cricket. I think in the next 3 or 4, 5 years, you're probably going to have a franchise system where someone like an MR will own a lot of players, much like the football, where they kind of play in all these leagues, and there might start to be little gaps where you actually go back and play international cricket, where it's supposed to be international cricket and then the leagues come second. It might actually shift, and it's a sad thing. I think Test cricket was really good with what's happened here in South Africa over the last 6 months, because there's another interest that was created. We don't have another Test match in South Africa for the next 18 months, which is sad. It's a sad state of affairs, but that's where it is. I mean, we might go and win the Test championship and then have no cricket to come and celebrate it back home. I think the SA20 is moving earlier, and then there's a bit of a West Indies series, and then they go to the World Cup in February. But besides that, we're all away from home. And unfortunately, it's the nature of the beast, and you can't begrudge these players. I mean, they've got a short period of time, so maybe 10, 15 years where they can play, and they're trying to make as much finance as they can. It's not like the golfing world where you can play for until you're 50 and then move on to the seniors tour and continue to make money. It is a short period, and we don't have a strong economy in the cricket sense. We don't have enough finance here to allow them to just play Test cricket and make a living out of doing that, or just playing for South Africa. They have to go abroad to go and make the proper money. So, yeah, it's not the ideal situation, and I think one-day cricket in particular is fighting for importance. That's why this Champions Trophy is quite an important kind of tournament at this space and time. I hope one-day cricket never is lost. The reason why I say that is all school cricket is kind of 50-over cricket. All club cricket is kind of 50-over cricket. And for those teams who play good 20-over cricket, there's no longer format. So your sides, your minnows, like say, obviously not the ones who involved, but anyone who's looking to come through, so your Namibias or Kenyas or whatever they're looking to do, if they only play in 20-over cricket and there's no 50-over cricket, how are they going to improve their skills? And I think that 50-over game has to keep relevant. If you had to say to the players now, I'm sure a lot of them would say, hey, let's play 20-over cricket and Test match cricket.
Yeah.
And even Test match cricket is going to become a niche market. I wouldn't be surprised 5-10 years time where just 5 or 6 teams are playing Test cricket, because it's expensive to host. 5 days, it costs them more money. They'd rather have 5 T20s spaced over 2 weeks than have a 5-day Test match, because it costs them more. And also the skills that required, the kind of personnel that has to perform. It's not that easy to kind of find those individuals. I don't think India, Australia, England, New Zealand and South Africa would ever kind of lose Test cricket. But there is that danger, so we're going to have to watch this space. But it's driven by the franchises now, and I think it's probably going to get even a bit worse, to be honest.
Is Test cricket, is the longer format of the game not the foundation of skills development in cricket? So as much as we enjoy the razzmatazz of T20 and batsmen being able to hit the ball to literally 360 around the park now, is the foundation for that skill development not laid by the longer format of the game?
Yeah, it is. I think the 50-over game, it gives you time to get yourself in. You learn the art of having to bowl 2 or 3 or 4 spells. You learn how to be able to keep your body fit enough to be able to bowl 6 deliveries rather than just the 24. So I think the one-day cricket has its part to play, particularly in parts of the world where there's no Test cricket. Obviously the provincial system of 4-day cricket obviously helps there as well. I mean, and there's very few that end up playing the Test format. But the longer format, if you want to describe it as that, is vital. I think it teaches you so much about your skills, abilities, and what you have to do to be able to survive and be effective in all formats. So, yeah, I don't know. I often get told we're a bit of a dinosaurs with regards to how our outlook is and how we want to protect the longer format in the game. Is there that many people who actually care about whether the longer format is kept? But it's become an exciting brand. I saw a stat the other day. What did we have? I think there was, in the last 2 years or something, there's only been 9 draws in the test match arena.
Wow.
So people are scoring quicker. There's more results that are created, and you're getting more people being able to view it maybe on the TV, but not as many people coming to the ground.
Yeah. My personal favourite format is Test cricket. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the Border Gavaskar Trophy in Australia over the December time. It was beautiful. Also, because you can wake up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, turn the TV on, and watch them flail away. But there, it just seems to that when the two giants of the three, England, Australia, India, those Test series seem to be quite captivating. How much of a responsibility, in your opinion, do those big three have to look after the rest of us? The New Zealands, the South Africas of the world, because ultimately, it's no good if they're just doing triangular series after time, and you've got the Ashes one year, and then you've got the other guys playing each other the following year.
Yeah, I mean, they are icon series. So when you've got your best playing against the best, it makes for great TV. It makes for a great product, and they do have a responsibility. I think the RCC is also understanding there is I think they're forming a fund where they're going to get some finance to try and help the countries that are less financially flush to be able to accommodate Test cricket. I think the biggest thing is you see a lot of two-match Test series because it's, as I say, financially it's a bit of a burden. So they'd rather just have the two, and instead of the third one, have 3 T20s and make some money back. And that's the nature of the beast. So they are aware of it, but also with the programs and the franchise leagues, how do you fit it all in? So that's why they say, okay, well, let's just have 2 tests and do our white ball series as well, and then you can head off and go and play there, and then come back for another series. So it's a juggling act, and we can't get away from it. And I think, as I say, financially, those 3 that you mentioned are in such a strong position that they can command. I mean, India's in the strongest position because they say, okay, you've got one RPL league that you can play T20, the rest of it you can't go anywhere.
Yes.
So they've got all their cricketers for the whole year, and then they have a break of international cricket for 2 months, and their players play on that, and then they go back to representing India. England were strong enough financially to be able to keep the likes of Anderson and Broad just for Test cricket once they didn't go away and play in any leagues. And Australia's got a wonderful following there, and they're full stadiums from the Test arena as well. So unfortunately, it's where they are. They're financially sound and they're making money, but they do understand the responsibility, but I don't think it can rest all on their shoulders.
Yeah. An interesting thought might be having test windows. So whereby you have maybe the 2 summers. So you've got the English summer, which would be a test window, and then you might have the Southern Hemisphere summer, which would be the other test window. And then you've got players that might be contracted to their respective unions or cricket boards or whoever, and as part of the test playing squads. And then you have the test window, and then during that test window, there's no T20 cricket. There's no one-day international.
Well, that's
cricket.
Marco. I'm saying that's why I think the format will end up being like the soccer setup, where Manchester United hire you for 9 months or whatever the year, or your whole year contract, and then they give you a little 2-week gap to go and play for your country, and then you come back and you carry on with the league, and then you go for another 2 weeks. And that's what Test cricket might become in the future. So I'm saying 5-10 years time, we hope not. That all the countries will try and hang on to it. But if it's costly, if your players aren't up for it, if you can't get personnel to win your Test matches, you can understand if it kind of dwindles.
Chatting to some of the current crop of players and getting a feel for where they're at, because the game has obviously changed with 3 formats, is there still a hunger to represent your country at a Test level?
Well, when we ask him, they always say yes. But I don't know, and I think you want the honour, and I think because you've been raised in a country where Test cricket was prevalent for so many years, and you've seen the Test kind of story play its way out over the years, and you've maybe followed it. But the younger generation, I mean, your Andre Pretorius, is there a desire to play Test cricket? I don't know. I'd have to sit and chat with him. And also, are you willing to push through aches in your body to be able to go through a Test match, or would you rather save yourself to make sure that you're fit for when the SA20 starts or the RPL starts? As I say, you can't get into their minds and get the exact honesty out of them, but I think still a genuine desire from a lot of people to play Test cricket, but whether they're as hungry to do it, if circumstances don't play out in a certain way, I'm not so sure.
Ben Stokes, I think, has set a precedent as far as that's concerned. You know, wanting to prioritise his Test cricket career and prolong it. I think he retired from ODI cricket, if I'm not mistaken, or one of the shorter formats of the game.
ODI, and then he came back, I think. Yeah.
Did he come back?
I think he's reintroduced himself. But you see, the product there for them, it's always difficult when you're talking Australia or England, because their Test product is good. Yeah. I mean, you don't battle to full stadiums in the UK. You have 6 Test matches there, they're packed. If you go to Australia, the Test matches there are packed. So you can understand, whereas you have other parts in the world where, okay, well, I want to play Test cricket, and you go and there's no one there.
Yeah.
Is there that same desire? So, and as I say, financially, what they would get paid to play in a Test match, I don't know what Australia would be or England, but I think there was talk of like £600,000 contract for Broad and Anderson. Well, if you're going to get that, then I'm going to keep my desire to play Test cricket, exactly. And that's the only format I'm going to play. So financially, it's also got to make sense.
Money talks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What is the pinnacle of the game, in your opinion, then? We've got all these formats. What is the pinnacle of the game?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, it was Test cricket, and then we introduced one-day cricket, and then it was the World Cup. And now you've got the T20 that pops around every 2 or 3 years. You'd have to go individually again and say to the person, what is the ultimate? You know, is the ultimate to go and play in a Test championship and win it? Or is the ultimate to win the Ashes? Or is the ultimate to win a World Cup? I think as South Africans would probably still say, let's win a World Cup, because we haven't managed to achieve one of those. But yeah, I mean, or is the ultimate these days, I mean, to be brutally honest, is the ultimate to get a 3-year contract in the RPL and set yourself up financially? I mean, that could be the ultimate for some of those young guys. You don't know. When they sit at home, I mean, I used to sit at home and lie on my bed and dream about playing for South Africa. Do they sit at home dreaming about, well, if I played for the RPL and I did really well and I got this kind of contract, might be the ultimate for them?
Sure. And then I'm just thinking, I'm putting myself in their shoes. You go and you play in front of packed stadiums. We spoke off air about how fanatical the fans in India are. So you get in there and you're in a heaving stadium and you're playing for, you know, the Super Kings or whoever, and you become an icon in that particular team. You know, as a youngster, I mean, I think it was Mapaka who got an RPL contract, basically barely out of school.
Yeah, well, there's 2 examples. You got Brevis and Mapaka. I mean, both of them, I don't think had almost played many games for their franchises, and they've got contracts. And not only is it a contract in the RPL, there's a couple of other franchise tournaments that are happening in as well. So it's difficult to say. If you say to Brevis now, what's your ultimate? Is it to play Test cricket? Maybe he's kind of grown towards that, and he was included in the Test squad, I think that was in Bangladesh. Maybe there might be a desire there. But I mean, you would think as a 19, 20, 21-year-old, whatever he is, he's probably pretty financially secure already. Yeah. And if he continues to do well in the T20 leagues, you know, I mean, someone like a Tristan Stubbs, I think, has a desire to play, and he's kind of turned down a couple of T20 leagues because he really wants to play Test cricket. And when I asked him about it, he said, I was a stodgy blocker or plodder when I was playing for Grey High School in PE. So his mindset growing up might have been more along the Test format. Where some of these other young kids who walk in and just smash it to all parts, they're probably thinking more T20 RPL.
Yeah. You mentioned that, smashing it to all parts, and I listened to another podcast that you were on last year, and you spoke about how back in your playing days, as a bowler, you felt like you could have a real impact on the game. And I got the impression that you felt that wasn't necessarily the case anymore, that, you know, batsmen being able to play 360 around the ground, it's made life a lot more difficult for the bowlers to, shall we say, star in the performance. Do you think that is still the case? Do you think the game is weighted in favour of the batsmen still at this moment?
Yeah, I think of these T20 leagues, there's no doubt that it's sometimes the bowlers go in there with, well, how can I go through damage control? You know, am I trying to pick up 5 wickets? Probably not. And that's my worry. I mean, cricket's always been a contest between bat and ball, so I hope it always stays that way. But at sometimes in these T20 matches, you're actually trying to bowl the ball as far away from the batsman as you can. You're not even thinking about the stumps or getting them out. You just want to limit the damage. and that's when I kind of feel for them. And I don't know which podcast it was, but I always go along the lines of thinking of, I was always trying to have an impact on the game. I was always trying to pick up wickets, trying to win the game for my country. And if someone smashed me over the top of the head, I kind of took it personally, and if I went for 60 or 70 in a match in my 10 overs, I took it personally. I think the mindset's kind of changed, where it's, oh, well, it's going to happen. It's the nature of the beast, and from time to time we're going to disappear, and hopefully it's my day today where I don't disappear and I do a bit of a job. Skills-wise too, is your desire was always to try and come up with skills to pick up wickets, whereas now it's trying to come up with skills at times just to not be damaged.
That's interesting.
And if you had to, we're trying to take it into a golf analogy. If you had some of the old courses that were tight and you had tree lines and you had to hit a certain shape to be able to land the ball in the fairway, and the skill to maybe adjust, you hit a draw this hole, hit a fade the next hole. That was kind of what the skill was. And if you missed the fairways, you were maybe a bit upset, and there was a premium on hitting them because you would score better. Then if you kind of bring an open golf course where it's wide open and you can just low drive every time, those kind of skills that kind of anyone can do, when I say try and hit it as far as possible if it doesn't matter where it goes, you kind of take a bit of the skill away from what you're trying to do and how you're trying to achieve your goal. And then as a guy who bombs it, you go to a course that's tight, you say, oh, well, I'm only going to face this once a week, so it doesn't really matter. If I hit it in the bush lots, I'll just wait for the next tournament to come around. Whereas that wasn't our mindset. We're like, every game, I'm going to try and pick up wickets, I'm going to try and win the game for my country, and I don't want to disappear. Whereas now, I think they're more happier with saying, oh, well, it can happen from time to time. Not that it's a bad mindset, but it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. Do you think that there's been an asymmetry with the skill development of the batsman, so being able to score all around the ground, and that has been asymmetrical with an appropriate or corresponding skill development of the bowlers?
Yeah, I don't think the bowlers have developed as much, and the thing is, it's hard. Like, what else do you do? You can either swing it either way, whereas the batters have kind of opened up a new range. I mean, in the old days, you kind of scored in front of the wicket as much as possible. If you scored behind, you felt like it was a bit of a risk. Now they're scoring behind, in front, reversing, lapping, paddling. So, and the bats have probably got a lot better too, which makes them believe they can hit it out the ground. In my day, Lance was the only guy who kind of really practiced it as much as he did. And he walked away with this massive confidence that I can make it disappear. And then we all kind of hopped onto that boat and started practicing ourselves. And instead of having one person in the team who believed that he could smack anything out the park as far as he wanted to, you kind of ended up with 2 or 3. Now you've got like 8 or 9 in the side that believe they can do that. So their batting skills have got better. And as I say, bowlers, I think, have gone down to game plans more than trying to develop new skills, because from a swinging perspective, the ball swings for maybe 2 or 3 overs now in the T20 format, and then there's no shape. It doesn't reverse swing, so you can't think about that. Everyone's come up with new kinds of slow balls, but slow balls are slow ball. Once people have worked out what you're doing, you can't really add too much more to it. And people have become so inept at picking them up and just depositing them into all parts of the ground. So I think it's definitely been harder for the for the bowlers. And the batters, it's been, a lot of guys have got stronger as well. And I think that's correlated into quicker scoring rates in test matches and more inventive approaches in test matches, and maybe that's why there's been more results. But yeah, sometimes I sit there and think, gosh, I would love to just get involved and help these bowlers out. And also I think I would love to go into that situation and see, mentally, what would I be thinking? Like,
yes.
what could I have done differently? Because sometimes you think, I'm not so sure about that game plan or that delivery, or why don't you try that? But unless you can go out and do it yourself, you can't really get it done. So I do have a lot of sympathy for them at times. And I do wonder sometimes what the mindsets are about, because, when you're involved, you know exactly what you're thinking, what you're trying to do, what the game plan was going to be. But I don't know, the fields have got smaller, the bats have got better, the guys have got stronger. I don't know where it's... I think the only thing that maybe down the line might show its face is that with all these batters trying to be so inventive, trying to be so unpredictable, trying to learn all these new shots, their basic techniques of defense don't come to the fore. So we've seen it now. If you get a surface where there's a bit in it or the ball's swinging around, guys look like they haven't got a clue. They don't know whether Arthur or Martha because, hey, how do I deal with this? Whereas if it's coming dead straight on a runway, they'll deposit it and they'll be in their element. But even in this SA20, we had a lot of games where the bowlers kind of dictated terms because the wicket was stopping or turning or there was a bit of swing through the air. So, yeah, maybe down the line, because they don't have defensive techniques, the bowlers might come back into their own.
Yeah. You mentioned Test cricket and how many results and the lack of draws over the last couple of years. As a fan, I've also noticed I tend to agree with you, number one, but number two, I think that I've noticed more batting collapses, where batsmen haven't been able to see out a difficult session. The pitch is doing something, the bowlers have got their tails up. They don't have the staying power and the resilience to, get 10 runs or 50 balls and just see out the session, come back after tea, start again. Do you think that that's the case and that's been a product of T20 cricket, for example? I
mean, we used to try and ground out scores. So you'd play in a one-day international and the wicket would be doing a bit and you'd be 3 down quickly. And then it was like, okay, well, let's reframe things. And if we can get to 180 or 190, it might be competitive. And then someone would start to ground and go into test match format, trying to leave, playing well, being selective about what they go after. It's maybe not there anymore. I mean, maybe it's on the golfing terminology. You might have had those guys who grounded out making the cut. Whereas now they go, I'm just going to keep bombing it. And when I get that week that I play well, then I'll make my money for the month or two. And then go back and keep waiting for that tournament where everything goes according to plan. Rather than, no, I'm going to really try and work hard at trying to just make the cut and then see where it takes me. But, it's a hard one to put your finger on. And also, I mean, I coached a little bit in the IPL with Mumbai Indians up until 2012. I also don't know what the mindset of some of the players are now. It would be interesting to get into those dressing rooms and see. Because you often have guys who come out of there and go, no, the mindset's different now. It's not about grinding things out. It's about how good my strike rate is, because my strike rate gets me my next contract. When people are looking through the stats and facts and figures and saying, okay, he averages, doesn't matter what he averages, it's 20, close to 30, but his strike rate's 160. And that's the one we're after. And then he gets the next contract. Just what it is.
Yeah, the evolution of the game.
Exactly.
Something that struck me in a previous interview that you did was you prided yourself on how you were able to do a job for the team when you didn't have your A game. And I think you said something along the lines of you have your A game, you had your A game about 20% of the time, and the other 80% you were trying to find something, you were trying to do a job with when you weren't maybe not feeling as great. And I immediately thought of golfers as an analogy as well. I work with professional golfers in the strength and conditioning field. And I think if that's probably the most important skill that a professional golfer can have, it's how good is your B game. Because if your B game still gets you into the top 30, then you're going to have a lovely career in golf. If your B game has missed the cut, then it's going to be a very short career. So how were you able, from a mindset standpoint, how were you able to deliver and do a job for your team and for your country with your B game?
Yeah, I think it was got to do with my technique and the way I went about things. I never wanted to go for runs. From a little pick, playing under 13 or whatever, I just didn't want to be expensive. I just wanted to make sure I didn't go for boundaries. So that was always part of my makeup, to be consistent and be reliable. And I think the biggest thing in international cricket is that you don't produce your best all the time. Sometimes actually when your body's feeling great, when there's no niggles, when you're charging in, you try and run in and bowl too quick and it kind of goes all over the show and you don't get your best performances. Whereas I did learn the art of, okay, on my day, it's not coming out right, I'm not feeling comfortable, but how can I still do this job? And I suppose that pride of performance, wanting to walk away thinking I haven't let my team down, I would have been more disappointed if I'd let my team down than excited if I'd had man of the match, if I can equate it that way.
A loss aversion.
Yeah, so I was, when I've achieved and when I went back to my room and I was man of the match, I felt like, well, that's what it's supposed to be. It's not like, oh, that's a rarity, look at me. I was like, no, that's the kind of job I'm supposed to do.
No, you're starting to sound like Roy Keane now. Have you ever listened to any of his stuff?
Yeah, I've seen a few clips that they send Manchester United fans. So yeah, no, but I agree with some of the stuff. I have heard some of his stuff where he goes, "That's your job." My job was to open the bowling for South Africa. It was an honour and a privilege to do it, and I had the chance to set the tone, and I had the chance to get some of their best players out. And if I got them out, then I was doing my job for the team, and we were setting up a victory. And if it didn't go according to plan, I was like, give me the next game. I've got to get back on the horse. I've got to get my performance where it needs to be. And I think that's just the way. I'm trying to think, who was the analogy that you put initially? I was going to answer
golfers.
Yeah.
How they, for example, with their B game,
they
could come
yes.
top 30, but if a B game is missing the cut, you're going to have a short career.
Exactly. So, but also that's where you get your confidence from.
Mm.
So, for example, if you're thinking of someone like a Rory or Tiger or whoever it may be, they've won tournaments with their C game.
Mm.
You know how when they walk to a tournament, they're not concerned as the guy who knows I can only compete if I produce my A game. So that's for me. When I was playing for South Africa, I had felt times when you say, Shaun, how did you feel today? I was like, terrible. It wasn't coming out anywhere near. But you do a job 2 for 20 in your 10 overs, and everyone thinks, oh, and then you go and smack a little 20 at the back end, you get man of the match. It's like, well, how are you feeling? It's like, not great.
Terrible.
It felt terrible today. But I've now got the confidence of I've helped South Africa win a game with my C game.
Yeah.
And that's the confidence when you get, and you know that, if I'm on my A game, bring it on.
Look out.
Yeah, because then I'm just feeling like I can land it where I want to. I can implement whatever strategy I want to. And I'm feeling in a great space. And you have those little purple patches. And that's why those guys become unstoppable. But the key to it is, the key to it, I think, was like someone, say, for example, striving to win his first golf tournament ever that he's ever achieved. If you actually, once he does it, like Detry, I think Detry won for the first time. And then he probably played some of his best golf. But you'll have another time where a guy wins and he goes, I can't believe I actually won it with the way I played.
Mm-hmm.
Because I played so much better in so many other tournaments and I've never come close. And that's the hard thing to try and tell them mentally, is that actually sometimes if you just hang in there long enough and you don't give up on the round or the 4 rounds, you eventually come good and you start to score and then you can win. Whereas when you've never won, you think, well, I have to be A+ game. That's the only chance of me ever winning, if I produce my A+. And then when you win and you haven't produced your A+ game, you now get a little bit more confidence. And you score, consistency comes out because you know, okay, I don't have to. I don't have to make sure that everything's on point. I used to go home, my wife will tell you so many stories of when I'd go home and I'd be so frustrated with the way I was batting in the nets. And then I'd go out and get runs. And then I'd come home and say, I'm batting unbelievably in the nets. And I get nothing. Mm-hmm. So there's no direct correlation between unfortunately, there's not a direct correlation between exactly how your practice goes to how you perform in the middle. Because, your confidence can be thrown with something that happens in the first 2 minutes of batting. But I think my point of view was always just give yourself the best chance. So tick as many boxes as you can in your preparation to make sure you're ready to go. You've got the experience as well, which helps, and you're able to deal with any situations you might face. But unfortunately, there's no exact correlation. So, like if I bowl 100 balls and I land them all in that area, does that mean I'm going to have success tomorrow? No, but does it give me the best chance? Probably.
Yeah. Did you, as a youngster in your professional career, did you have that expectation of yourself that you had to have your A+ game to be able to deliver a performance? And then that slowly started to get better perspective as you got older? 100%.
And if I think back to when I started playing for South Africa, what I knew was scary. As scary as in nothing. I was just a boy who could run up and hit a length and try and bowl as quickly as I can. And I had a slow ball, which in those days was a little bit rare compared to some of the other guys, particularly as the one-day format came along. The skills you learn on the job, and by the end of your career, what you now know about your game compared to what you did there. But the thing that kept me in the mix, kept me getting selected, allowed me to be performing okay, was my consistency. I just had that ability to hit a length consistently and be able to do it with regularity. even my batting technique as to what I knew when I first came in. I mean, so also, I've got I've centered my life around my Christian faith, which has been massive for me, and it kept everything in perspective. I mean, I realized I didn't give myself the abilities, but I used to try and do everything I possibly could to nurture it as best I could. And there's no doubt that when you look back on your career, God's had his hand on my situation. I mean, I'll tell you, for example, my debut for South Africa. My best performance for Natal, before being picked as a one-day international debutant for South Africa, was like 3 for something. And my highest score was like 22 not out. I get picked to play for South Africa. In my debut match, I get 66 not out. When we were like 100 for 6, me and Jacques put on a score, and I get 66 not out, and I end up 4 for 30 odd, and I get man of the match. Now, that's my best batting performance in one-day cricket and my best bowling performance in one-day cricket, and that was for South Africa.
In the same match?
In the same match, and on your debut. So now it's like, thank you, Lord, because yes, you, as I say, you nurture your talents and you do as much as you possibly can, and I think the way I went about my business gave me the best chance. Like I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I was just focused on cricket. I was just like, I want to play this game. And that also helped. And then I go to Warwickshire, and I'm replacing Brian Lara as a pro. He's had an unbelievable season. He's got 501 in one game, and he's broken world records and whatever. And I go there, and I'm like, oh, please, Lord, can I just settle in here? First game, I get 4 wickets and 4 balls. Now, I never got a hat-trick before that. Now I get 4 wickets and 4 balls. So people say fate, they say whatever. And it's like, for me, I nurtured my talents, which I wasn't given my talents. God gave them to me. And then there's no doubt that I was blessed at times to be able to perform the way I was and just kind of settle in. It's like I never got dropped from the South African side after my debut as a one-day cricketer, because I performed, and then I ended up getting man of the series, and it just snowballed on to playing for South Africa for the rest of my life. So all those things fell into place nicely.
Yeah. How much of a role then do you think luck plays in having a long career? So for example, you've centered it around faith, but at the same time making sure that you are injury free, that, for example, if you are on a break and then somebody else is not quite hitting their straps at the same time that you're out, but you can have the list is very long of guys who have no reason to be dropped, but they've taken a month off from the game, and then blow me down, some guy comes in superstar and then blows everybody out the water, and this poor sod is left in obscurity. How much of a role do you think luck plays in professional sport and professional cricket?
I definitely think it does. I think but I do think that when you say luck, there's also people's mindsets that has a big impact. So if you're a person who something unlucky happens to you and it kind of derails you properly, and you think, oh, I've just been so unlucky. There's other guys who, I wasn't lucky, but I'm not going to allow this lack of luck to keep me down. I'm going to keep coming back fighting. I think eventually the luck starts to fall in your favor. And I think that is a part of it. And I think there's a lot of people. I mean, everyone in South Africa, in the world, everyone loves a story. I mean, we grew up with these books next to us and people telling us stories, and you'd follow the plot and how it went along. So you're all about your story. I think you're all trying to write yours, and we love listening to them, and we love being part of them. We went chasing the sun.
Yes.
Everyone loves to sit and watch that. Wow, because we're now part of the journey. We've seen how the story unfolded. And then there's probably luck involved in the South Africans winning some of those games. But I think mentally, if you keep having resilience and keep having that inner belief that it's going to turn, I think that you end up on the right side of luck more often than you do.
Yeah, that's such an interesting thing. Tiger Woods always struck me when I don't remember. And I've watched a lot of Tiger Woods playing golf, and I've watched a lot of his press conferences for obvious reasons. He was just an unbelievable golfer. And I never once saw him complain in a press conference about this or about that. If he went and he didn't have his A game, let's say he shot 74, 2 over par, he would always come back in the presser and he would say, that's the best score that I could have shot today. And that just spoke to the mental fortitude of the man. And it's that hardiness, that resilience. Yes, even though somebody else shot 66 today. I shot 74. But for me, on this day, that was the best score that I could have shot. It's possibly the most positive outlook that a person can take on something like that. And this is a guy who's, in terms of a patch of golf, the most dominant golfer that's ever lived in that era of the late 90s, early 2000s. And even him is saying 74 was the best score that I could have shot today. I mean, mindset is everything.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if I could try and look at it from my perspective, is that was probably my kind of outlook to, if I'm not feeling great with my action or the ball's not coming out right, how can I kind of still do a job? And I probably could go away saying at times that was probably the best I could have bowled in the circumstances.
Yes.
And I think that mindset, I think the one thing about cricket too is, and I always tell the business people that we're probably the best ones to employ, because in the business world, it's about doing a job, okay? And if you're in an organization, there's the accountant, there's the marketing man, the MD. And as much as you're a team, you're individuals, because you have to balance the books, you have to make the sales, you have to market the product properly. Cricket's very much like it as well. I mean, in rugby circles, you get into a loose maul and you've got 14 other guys pushing you, and they go over the line, you score the winning try, you get up and you're a hero. And in the scrum, there's a lot of other guys pushing and whatever it may be. But as in cricket, it's you versus me. It's like it's that direct battle. Yes, someone takes a catch for you. But at the end of that, it's the bowler versus the batter, and that's the kind of contest. And you go away and say, well, how did you bowl? I said, no, great bowl, great. Oh, what were your figures? 0 for 30. Couldn't have bowled too well. How did you bat? No, I was hitting it brilliantly. What did you make? 15. It's like, okay, well, you didn't achieve. Because there's those exact stats, facts, and figures that kind of assess how you perform. Golf would be the same. I mean, there's no one else moving the ball as you're hitting. There's no one else heckling you. We're not allowed to sledge in golf. It would be interesting if you were. But no one else is saying something to you before you hit the golf ball.
Have you ever been to a Ryder Cup?
Yeah, but that's the crowds. Yeah. That's the crowds, and the crowds do that in cricket as well. But, I mean, the ball standing still, it's your own mental game. So, I mean, if there's any sport where you can say, that's the best I could have shot on that day, it's because there's no variables. It's just you, your swing, your mindset, your everything on that day. Cricket is kind of similar in that way, whereas a lot of the other sports, maybe tennis would be the same, but then there's always someone coming back. So someone's bowling the delivery and someone's returning the serve. And they put in that extra pressure or does it make sense what I'm trying to say? So, I mean, I understand what Tiger's saying, but I think in cricket, as I say, it was hard because it's such a stats-driven game that if you don't produce the facts and figures that make sense to everyone else, you can't hoodwink them into thinking that you're actually going to right.
Yeah. Circling back to bowlers, I was going through the rankings, ODI rankings, best batsman, best bowler, and there seems to be a bit of a golden era in limited overs cricket with respect to spinners. I mean, I think 4 of the top 5 at the moment in the ODI rankings are spinners. You know, a guy like Noor comes to mind as well for the Durban Supergiants. I mean, I haven't seen batsmen that far in the bush for a long time. I mean, not being able to pick it, like not even close. Is that something that you're seeing and you agree with the trend of maybe a really important phase in cricket for spinners?
I think what happened is with the advent of T20 cricket, spinners were used to people coming after them. They were used to someone trying to whack them out the ground because they didn't have the fear factor. They couldn't bounce you or hurt you or anything along those lines. So people looked to attack spinners. So when everyone started to look to attack them, it wasn't something that was foreign to them. It's like if someone came running down the wicket at me in my day and tried to smash me over the top, it was like, hey, what's going on here? Yeah. It's like, and your whole equilibrium would be thrown out of balance. Whereas the spinners have always had that. They've understood that people try and smack them. And then they've got the ones who've got the ability to be kind of possess the most variations. Yeah. I think because of the nature of what they do. And then also the fact that batters can't really look to prod back a few balls. So you know that they're going to start coming at you, and that's where with you holding all the aces, because if you've got these variations, especially the new batters that keep coming in, to deal with a new arm, when you first walk to the crease, and now the rate's already 15, you can't. After 2 balls, you're thinking, I have to go here. Yeah. And you don't know what the next one's coming. I think that's why they've been so successful. But there's no doubt that they've they've kind of stepped. I think there was one stage, I don't know if it was in one day, I think it was in the T20 arena. All the top 10, I think, were spinners.
Sure.
At one stage. And it kind of makes sense. I think it might have been after a World Cup in the subcontinent or something along those lines where conditions had suited them as well. But I think just mindset-wise, they don't get flustered because they know, well, I can't exactly bounce you or run off a long run or anything. I've just got to accept that it might disappear, but I'm backing my little skills.
Yeah, I'm going to flight it or the art of deception.
Well, it'd be the same. So for example, imagine if you were in the golfing setup, for example. I mean, what Luke Donald was rated number 1 in the world at some stage.
Yeah,
right?
he was.
So imagine if they decided to bring all the courses back to 6,500 meters and have these tight fairways and whatever it be, and there was no advantage from bombing it. Luke Donald wouldn't be upset.
No, not at all.
And
Zach Johnson neither.
All his mindset would be, great, let's go. And I think that's why I'm saying the spinners are used to having to shape balls and hit fairways kind of thing.
Yes.
So if that's what's produced to them, they're not bothered. Whereas the guys who bomb it, all of a sudden thinking, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And this isn't what I'm used to. They might struggle.
Oh, it's nice. It's nice to have the spinners have their day in the spotlight and the limelight after being abused for decades in the game. I wanted to chat a little bit about fast bowling then as well. On the flip side of things, I don't notice many out-and-out express fast bowlers at the moment in world cricket. We were chatting off air about the India-Pakistan series on Netflix, and Shoaib Akhtar came to mind, and they spoke about the intensity with which he bowled and the speed.
Why would you want to these days?
Why would you want to bowl so fast? Fear factor?
In the T20 format? Fear factor. Sometimes you can only bowl the one bouncer. That's what I'm saying. So I think it's a very difficult art. I don't think people appreciate from a body perspective. I mean, you see Jasprit Bumrah now has to pull out. Pat Cummins has pulled out. Mitchell Stark's pulled out. All these fast bowlers are pulling out because with the workload and the rigors of trying to charge in every day and bowl at 140, 150. I mean, for myself, I had a lot of injuries at the front of my career. So when I first came on, we didn't have speed sticks, but I probably would have been late 140s maybe every once in a while with I'll just say it, so I'll put it on record. Yes. Maybe there was a 150
maybe there.
Just to make myself believe that I was quite quick. I had massive ankle issues. I had a fracture of the back before I started playing for South Africa. So spondylolisthesis. So when I say the joints at the back, when you get a stress fracture, one breaks, and then you've got to wait for it to mend off. Both of mine had broken off. So I'd either had to have an op or just keep going. So after about a year and a half, I couldn't keep up with the rigors of it. I don't think our shoes were maybe as good as they have become now. And we weren't that focused. I would love to have known a bit more about core stability and those kind of things back in the day. Yes, we used to do stomach exercise because we thought, but I don't think we understood the full effect of how, if you get that base so strong, what an influence it can have on your back. And I had hamstring injuries and groin injuries, and I had plenty. And I actually couldn't practice as much as I would like to have practiced because I was kind of said, no, I just want to play. So let me just rest and make sure I'm ready for the games. So the rigors of it, I mean, and by the end of my career, what I was hovering around 130, but I'd learned the control, learned the art of being able to land it, consistency, and I would have made a longer career out of that than if I'd carried on trying to bowl 150.
Yeah.
For my entire life, I probably would have broke down like Nokia, and I mean, all of those guys have had stress fractures, and it's just the nature of. It's so hard to be able to do that on your body. I mean, they say, 6 to 8 times your body weight goes through your body at point of delivery.
Compressive force, yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, you're going to have the wear and tear of it. So, if you are someone who can bowl it, well, why wouldn't you tone it down, bowl high 130s, and make more contracts, play more series?
Yeah. Get contracted to more T20 leagues, make more money.
Exactly.
Have a longer career.
And how many people can actually coach a fast bowler and get him to be as consistent or get his body to be in the right space of mind for that long period of time?
So the shorter formats of the game, T20, maybe seeing the rise of a new era in terms of prevalence of spinners and potentially the death of the out-and-out 150k an hour bowler.
Yeah, because also the batters got brave. You know, in our day, I mean, honestly, when we used to play Brett Lee and Shoaib Akhtar, there was fear factor there. And you feared for bodily harm. It was just not a matter of what you were thinking could possibly happen. So these days now, the guy runs up and bowls 150, they just get down and ramp him.
Yeah.
So the faster it comes, the further it goes behind the keeper, whereas we were all trying to hit this fast bowler in front of the keeper.
Did you ever face Shoaib Akhtar?
Yeah.
And?
No, I mean, so those were the two. I mean, the Shoaib was there and Brett Lee. Those were probably the two quickest that we faced. And it was, I mean, mentally you prepare and you practice and everything to deal with it. But every time you get there, I mean, don't get me wrong. When I was waiting to go into bat, I was like, I hope his spell's finished by the time I get to the crease. Or when you're in there, it's like, well, I'm happy to stay down this non-striker's end as long as possible. And I think everyone kind of went through that. I mean, that's the effect that fast bowlers have. That's why they've got X factor. So if you have got someone, particularly in test match arena, where there's nowhere to hide, if you've got someone who can bowl that express, they're going to be out and out and going to stand head and shoulders above the rest.
Yeah. Shaun, to finish off, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. It'd be remiss of me not to put you on the spot and ask you, number one, your prediction for Champions Trophy. Okay. Number two, your starting lineup. Who's your starting 11?
For South Africa?
For South Africa, yeah.
I would probably go...
I'll tell you if somebody's not in the squad.
Well, Temba's obviously the captain, so Temba and Ryan Rickleton, I think, would start. Probably the way Van der Dussen, 3, Markham 4, Miller 5, Klaasen 6. I don't think George Linder's in that squad. I mean, by the way he's playing.
Geez, he played unbelievably.
I think we've got to try and find more of a spot for him more regularly.
We picked our Champions Trophy squad quite early, eh? I mean, we picked it in Jan.
Yeah. I think they've been quite consistent about the guys, the personnel. Okay, so 7 would be Jansen. And then, Maharaj, Rabada. Nortje's there, is he?
Nortje's injured.
Is he injured again?
Yeah, Bosch has replaced Nortje.
Okay, no, I wouldn't go for Bosch. Lungi would probably have to play.
Shamsi?
And then Shamsi
in Pakistan.
7 is Jansen. And then Rabada, Ngidi, Maharaj, and
Shamsi.
No
room for a second all-rounder, like Vian Mulder?
Yeah, Vian Mulder, I mean, I saw an article where they were saying they believe he's going to be the key factor. Maybe he has to play, maybe someone like a Van der Dussen has to miss out. And then you got the extra bowling option. But I just think the experience, also Rassi, he's been over there and played in the Pakistan Premier League so many times. He's really done well.
Has he?
So there's little things that people miss, you know, like I think he opens the batting there in the T20 Premier League, and he's done remarkably well. So he knows the conditions, and with that experience, and it's also such a short format that there's 3 big games, isn't there? I mean, they've got to play Australia, they've got to play England. And Afghanistan, I think, is the third side, which is...
And I mean, they are just...
Yeah, I mean, they've got spinners falling out of their setup.
Falling out of this. And they got that batsman as well, who's unbelievable. His name eludes me at the moment.
Gurbaz, I think it is.
Yeah,
he's
that's the one.
Playing at the top of the order.
Yeah.
I think we've got a chance. I think Australia are missing a lot of their bowlers. England aren't performing that well if we go on the current form. India in...
Pakistan on their home turf?
Yeah, I mean, Pakistan are so unpredictable.
They're like the French in rugby.
Yeah, they came here and they played brilliantly against us. And, you know, when you see some of their guys perform, they've got Fakhar Zaman back, so at the top of the order, who's really potent. No reason why they couldn't go on. It's probably has opened the tournament, and that's due to the fact that teams like Australia have got a few injuries. England aren't performing that well. Bumrah's not going to be there for India. I think those guys are massive blows for their teams. But, it should be good.
Lovely. Shaun, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Thoroughly enjoyed it as a cricket fan. And, all the best. Safe travels to Pakistan, and I hope it goes well.
All good. Thanks a lot. Thanks,
Not so fast. It is such a cool feeling when I see that Spotify subscribers number increase on the weekly, when I see the number of people listening to the episodes going up, And it really makes a huge difference. Have you ever done something and you feel so good when you get rewarded by some positive feedback and you really feel like you're making a difference? That's what it means to me, and that's how I feel. And it goes a long way. If you like the show, share it and subscribe it. Thank you humbly, and I'll see you next week.